Ethan Parker was a 32-year-old American man living an unremarkable life in Columbus, Ohio, a life that looked fine from the outside but felt painfully empty on the inside. And every morning, he woke up feeling just a little more disappointed in himself than the day before. His routine was the same every single day: hit the snooze button 3 times, drag himself out of bed, rush to work, force a smile, come back home exhausted, scroll through social media, avoid the gym, order takeout, promise himself he'd try tomorrow, and then fall asleep feeling like a failure. And though he wasn't unhealthy, he wasn't healthy either. And though he wasn't broke, he definitely wasn't financially secure. And although he had big dreams, they all stayed trapped inside his mind because he never took action on any of them. Then one night, after another completely wasted day, Ethan stood in front of the bathroom mirror and stared at his reflection. The dark circles under his eyes, the tired posture, the look of someone who had been drifting through life instead of living it. And for the first time in years, he admitted something honest, raw, and painful. "I want to be better, but I don't know where to start." And that small moment of honesty, spoken at 11:47 p.m. in a quiet bathroom, became the spark that changed everything. Not because he suddenly became motivated or found the perfect plan, but because he finally stopped lying to himself. The following afternoon, during his lunch break, Ethan wandered into a small independent bookstore, not looking for anything specific, just killing time, until a simple white book on the self-improvement shelf caught his eye. A book about tiny habits and 1% daily improvements, which he picked up and opened to the first chapter, reading a line that struck him like lightning. If you get 1% better every day, you will be 37 times better in 1 year. And he reread that sentence over and over, realizing that maybe he didn't need to turn his entire life around all at once. Maybe he just needed to get a little better today than he was yesterday. He didn't buy expensive workout gear or join a gym or plan a complicated morning routine. He simply told himself, "My only job is to get 1% better today." And that tiny commitment felt so simple, so small, so doable that he actually believed he could stick to it. So the next morning, instead of planning a full workout or a dramatic life change, he put on his sneakers and stepped outside for a tiny walk, just 2 minutes, no more. And as soon as his brain started complaining, saying, "This is pointless," or "This won't change anything," he calmly walked back home and said to himself, "That's my 1% for today." He repeated the same thing the next day and the next, and by the end of the first week, he had naturally increased his walks to 5 minutes, then 10 minutes, not because he forced himself, but because showing up had become easier. And the habit wasn't about distance or weight loss or calories burned, but about building the identity of someone who shows up for himself. As he continued this small daily habit, Ethan learned something powerful. Your environment shapes you more than your motivation. So he began making tiny changes at home. He replaced junk food on the counter with apples and nuts, moved his social media apps to the last page of his phone where they were harder to reach, kept his sneakers near the door so they were the first thing he saw every morning, and placed a book on his pillow every morning so that at night he had to pick it up to move it. And once it was in his hand, he inevitably read at least 1 page, which often turned into 3 or 4. He began to understand a truth that changed his life. You don't rise to the level of your goals. You fall to the level of your systems. So instead of trying to be perfect for 1 day and quitting the next, he simply built better systems around him. Systems that made the healthy choice the easy choice. A month passed, and though he didn't look dramatically different, he felt slightly different. He had more energy. His mind felt a little clearer. And one morning, when he stepped on the scale without really thinking about it, he noticed he was 3 pounds lighter. Not a huge transformation, but undeniable proof that tiny actions weren't useless. They were just invisible until they weren't. This tiny victory made him smile in a way he hadn't in months, and he whispered, "Keep going. not because he felt pressured to change, but because for the first time in years, he believed that change was possible. 2 months into his journey, people around him began noticing differences. Coworkers asked if he was losing weight or if he started sleeping better. Friends commented that he looked more energetic and happier. But the biggest change wasn't physical at all. It was internal. Ethan started waking up earlier without hitting snooze, craving healthier food without forcing himself, reading every night without needing motivation, saving small amounts of money enigmatically each week, and naturally cutting down on screen time because he simply felt better doing other things. And at some point, he realized he was no longer trying to build good habits. He had become the kind of person who naturally lived them. This identity shift was the real transformation, and it created a powerful compounding effect. His daily walks gave him more energy. That energy made him perform better at work. Performing better earned him a raise. That raise reduced his financial stress. Less stress helped him sleep better. Better sleep improved his mental clarity, and that clarity inspired him to push himself in new ways. And all of it began with a 2-minute walk. 3 months after starting, during one of his usual Saturday walks at the park, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years, a desire to run even just a little. And so he tried running for 1 minute, then 2, then 3, stopping only when his legs burned and his chest felt heavy. And as he stood there, panting, a stranger walking by smiled and said, "Good work, man. Keep going." And those simple words hit him harder than the run itself, because inside, he realized something quietly powerful. I'm not the same person I was 3 months ago. And he knew he was right. By the 6-month mark, Ethan barely recognized his old self. He had lost 24 pounds, was jogging 2 miles. Without stopping, it finished 9. Books saved over $2,000, slept deeply and peacefully at night, controlled his impulses, spoke with confidence, and carried himself with a quiet sense of discipline he had never experienced before. And yet the most beautiful part of this transformation wasn't the physical results or the financial progress, but the sense of self-trust he had rebuilt. He became someone who kept promises to himself. And as he reflected on his journey, he realized his new life wasn't the result of massive effort or extreme motivation, but of tiny habits stacked gently on top of each other, one small action at a time, each one multiplying silently in the background until the results became too big to ignore. He understood now that anyone, even someone who feels lost, tired, unmotivated, or stuck, can change their life if they simply commit to being 1% better each day, and that the real magic of transformation lies not in dramatic leaps, but in small steps repeated consistently. And Ethan's story stands as a quiet reminder to anyone listening that you don't need to be perfect. You don't need to transform overnight. You don't need to wait for motivation, and you don't need to take giant steps. You just need to take one small step today, then another tomorrow, and keep stacking those tiny wins until one day you look in the mirror and whisper, with pride and gratitude, I'm not the same person I used to be, because the person staring back at you is someone you built through discipline, patience, courage, and the power of tiny habits, one day at a time, 1% at a time.